track.
Welcome to the Common Podcast, where we speak upon common sense and realize it really isn't that common. Ladies and gentlemen, today's topic, why women like this are ruining men. Even more so, how they're ruining families and the foreseeable society. So before I get further into this discussion, I would like to let the people that are listening right now know that if you want to engage with the podcast, I have an Instagram page, which is called The Real Common Podcast. It's the best way to get a hold of me or anybody in the Common Podcast crew. And we do Q&As and questionnaires that actually feature on the podcast. That's the best way to find it. So if you have any inputs or any recommendations, you can find us on there. If you are watching on YouTube and it's more convenient, you can find us on Spotify. Same thing goes vice versa. If you're listening on Spotify, but you want to see more of a visual, we have a video version of the podcast on YouTube. And without further ado, I got my boy, Ray Luna. What's going on, buddy? Welcome back. So today we're going to kind of start off with the whole Will Smith and Jada situation, what's going on. I feel like that's a pretty polarizing topic that's going on right now. And you actually came out and you sent me like a link that was
Did I?
Yeah.
Yeah.
You sent me a link and that was kind of like talking about what Will Smith is going through
what
right
he's being
now.
like reprimanded for and all that kind of stuff, right?
Yeah. So quick recap for the people that don't know. Will Smith at the Oscars slaps Chris Rock after Chris Rock says a joke about his wife, Jada Smith, and initially starts laughing. And right after, he goes up there and smacks him. I have a podcast on this, so y'all can go check it out. It's maybe about 2 podcasts before you're listening to this one.
It's pretty good, man.
So, but now Will Smith is going through a lot of consequences, negative consequences, which we'll get to in the future of this podcast. But this is no surprise to me.
Yeah, of course.
This I know a lot of people are feeling bad for Will Smith, and I guess fair enough. But at the same time, this is no surprise to me because I knew anybody with sense would know that there are that would know that there is
it really isn't that common
repercussions and consequences to certain actions like this. This is why men should not react in an emotional manner when it comes to certain things like this. But even more so, there's a lot of things coming out from Will Smith and Jada Smith's past. I don't know if you've seen, there's been a lot of clips coming back from their marriage and how faulty it is and stuff like that. And so a lot of people have been quick to go run to Jada Smith about why she's at fault to this, right? And so on this podcast, we kind of want to focus on Jada Smith and kind of how her as a woman and a wife has played a big role into what Will Smith is going on to right now. Because I truly believe that women like this, kind of, in my eyes, she's a little narcissistic and a little selfish. How she's ruining not only her husband, her marriage, but her family, and how people, if they replicate things like this, because she's an admirable woman in the general population of women. The smarter ones would know that this is not admirable and this should not be followed. But I mean, that's my opinion. I don't know your opinion. We'll get your opinion in a second. But dude. Well, what do you think about the whole Jada Smith? Will Smith
thing? It was something I kind of wanted to stay away from because I was like, it's Hollywood drama. I don't follow any of the tabloid lines or nothing like that. Yeah. But it is interesting to know that it's like, okay, this kind of behavior affects everybody. And nobody's immune to it, no matter what status level you are. Yeah. No matter what your income, no matter if, you're in the public realm, whatever. We're all susceptible to things of like behavior traits and stuff that could be seen as toxic,
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, there was a clip which I more than likely will show on the podcast right now, or the audio version would hear it. But so Will Smith, and these are little key clips and snippets that I saw before getting on the podcast that show and represent kind of the build up to this climactic situation that Will Smith is currently going through. So on Jada Smith's 37th birthday, he begins to orchestrate a birthday party for her 40 years birthday. So 3 years they took planning on this. And you can just imagine the festival that he put together, right? Live concert, banquets everywhere, all these different type of things. And at the end of it, she said to him, plain out and simple, it's like, wow, this is a disgusting act of your ego. Wow. Like, so she, instead of, saying like, this is a very great or very...
like being thankful.
Yeah, this is a great demonstration or...
it was more like for him,
versus
it was for her.
Instead of her acknowledging the compassion of his love toward her, she just kind of said like, "Well, you're doing all this to inflate your ego." Which could
there be truth to that? We don't know.
Well, here's the thing: Will Smith admits to saying that she was right, but at the same time, it's like that doesn't excuse her for her. Not appreciating or things like that, and you don't say things like that, especially in public.
Yeah, right. She said that in public.
Yeah.
Oh yeah.
And this was on the Red Table Talk. This is another thing that. This is another thing that.
So much stuff has come out on that show, man.
Exactly. Yeah. So there's a couple of characteristics that I believe that a healthy woman has. In my, people listening, they may disagree, but I believe a healthy woman is constructive. People aren't gonna like this one, but
in your biased opinion,
that they're feminine, supportive, and that they're firm.
Okay.
These are things that I believe that a constructive, healthy woman should have, and these are also things that Jada has displayed to not have. She's not been supportive. She has not been a firm place in her marriage, because we'll just kind of go through what Will Smith is going through in the situation and how she has not really been supportive.
Yeah.
So Will Smith right now, he is currently banned from the Oscars for about 10 years. He has been expelled from the Academy of Science and Scientific Arts. Bad Boys 4, the movie, was supposed to come out. It has been canceled. The Fast and Loose movie that was supposed to be recorded for Netflix has also been canceled. The movie I Am Legend 2 has dropped Will Smith as their lead actor and now has offered Michael B. Jordan the role.
Wow.
Jada, in an interview with American Weekly, said Will Smith over-exaggerated at the Oscars and I did not ask to be saved.
Wow.
Like the nail in the coffin at the end there, right?
It's again the blame on him.
The blame.
Yeah.
So what we're seeing here is a narcissistic woman because you can tell that she's very selfish. I mean, anybody looking at this situation, I would hope would be able to see this because not only, so what did Will Smith do in the very beginning? He laughed at the joke. He was hysterical about it. He was laughing. He looks over, sees Jada. She's upset, so he goes up there to defend her. Now, granted, she's not wrong. She didn't ask him to go slap him. Yeah. But as his wife, she needs to, in some way, shape, or form,
show some empathy.
And be supportive of her husband, right? She could have said something. I'm not saying to defend what he did was wrong or was right.
Yeah.
Simply like, what he did was wrong, but understand we're going through some things right now. She just put him out on blast. Like, look. He's his own individual.
Yeah.
I'm not responsible for what he says or does. So that's on him. I don't want to take the fault for whatever y'all are pushing the hate on him. And so apparently Will Smith right now, he's going through some he's going to rehab. He's in rehab for his depression and temper tantrum and all these things. And obviously there's been the whole entanglement situation where
the word of 2020.
Yeah, which is weird too because there's been some quotes from Will Smith from the Red Table talking about how basically saying that he's kind of agreed allegedly to having an open marriage and like we can kind of see how that's not admirable too and how he's kind of put himself in this mess. But yeah, dude, I mean, this is a sticky situation and I know a lot of people are hating. I don't know. I think people are torn.
I think so too. I mean, because here's someone who, at least from my perspective, like I grew up admiring, I didn't have posters of him on the wall or anything, but like a lot of what I did for work was in sales. And so there was lots of goals to meet and stuff. And I think almost every person that's in sales can attest to they've been in a sales meeting or saw some kind of motivational video, and there's Will Smith in an interview giving some kind of motivational speech, you know? So he's kind of been ingrained in that mindset forming of mine.
Yeah.
And he's always been someone that I've looked up to because a lot of what he said made a lot of sense. And not only that, it's a little bit more like me being Christian. We were always kind of, we would look to like Hollywood and marriages that were always temporary. You know, they would never last. And one of the few marriages that you saw in the limelight was Will and Jada.
Yeah.
That lasted for years.
Yeah.
And then he would speak about it, and they'd ask him, you know, how is it that you guys have done well for so long?
Yeah.
And he said, you know, divorce just isn't it's not an answer. You know, we got to work through the problems. And I always thought, man, here's someone who's really well-rounded, has a lot of maturity, right? So in a sense, I think it's just difficult. We kind of take it personally because we think we know him. And then for him to be going through this, to number one, do something in a complete 180 against his own character that we've come to know.
Yes.
And then suffer the consequences of that behavior, you feel for the guy, you know?
Yeah. But exactly like you said, it's the stuff that we saw in the limelight. The real marriage, I mean, behind closed doors. Obviously, we're seeing, that's the thing, you can't hide forever. Things are going to come out. Things are going to come out of the closet, and we're going to see the actual truth. And I also want to talk about their kids, because I look at their family.
It's rough, dude.
Yeah, I don't see their family being admirable at all. I used to look at Will Smith as to be an admirable person. Like you said, motivational. I used to listen to Will Smith's, some of his, like, you know, his motivational videos on YouTube. And on my way to the gym, I listen to some Will Smith. I don't see him as admirable anymore after this whole situation, after what's been coming out. And I know people might say, like, hey, he's human and he's going through some stuff, like respect and whatnot. But at the same time, it's there's consequence.
Yeah, exactly.
You know what's going on, and you're responsible at the end of the day. If I did something silly of some sort, you know, I'm going to reap those consequences. You reap what you sow. But yeah, let's focus on the kids. I mean, you know, Willow and Jaden, and she's on the Red Table Talk too. Willow, the daughter.
Oh, okay.
And she, I would say, is like a direct replica of the mom. I saw a few clips.
Really?
And in this conversation where he's talking about how he threw this ginormous party and whatnot, and Jada goes out and says, like, oh, you know, it's to inflate his own ego.
Yeah.
Her daughter's like, yeah, like, it's so true. Like, you know, kind of buying into that narrative. And eventually Will Smith does too. But, yeah, I don't know. Very awkward, weird family.
Yeah, I mean, they've never been the most, and you see that a lot with like famous people, famous kids. They're a little on the awkward side.
Yeah.
Maybe it's because they didn't have that interaction when they were younger, and so they're kind of socially awkward.
Yeah.
You see that a lot in Jaden Smith, you know.
Yeah, Jaden Smith's a little weird on Twitter. He's over here talking about he's gay, and
he might not really be in touch with himself very much. You know, he's still trying to figure himself out. But look at all the crap he's going through with his dad, with his mom, being divided. You know, that's got to be tough.
After the whole Will Smith and Chris Rock situation went on, he put on Twitter, said, that's how we do it. You know what I mean?
That's what he said?
That's what he said. That's what he tweeted out. And it's like, dude, you know what I mean? Like,
very weird.
Not only weird, but like you can see that they're delusional.
Yeah.
Like they don't know what's right from wrong.
Yeah, yeah.
And to a point that one of my really good friends made is like, well, maybe they're just completely disconnected from reality. Maybe they're just completely surrounded by yes men and people that don't.
They never tell them no.
Exactly. Yeah. But I kind of want to like take this whole situation from celebrities to
real life.
Real life. Yeah. Because
that's where it applies. That's where it's important.
Yeah, reality is that not everybody's going to be a celebrity.
Yeah.
And how this can actually affect. Because to be honest, I am not too concerned about Will Smith and all their situation. That is their business, and they're going to handle it however they're going to handle it. Celebrities and that whole lifestyle. But what I'm more interested in is the whole dichotomy of the marriage and the male and female aspect of the conversation.
The example that it serves to us, the viewing public.
Exactly. And how women admiring someone like Jada and trying to duplicate that is going to be a route for disaster. This is not, and I was speaking to a very close acquaintance, pastor of mine, and he had told me off air, he was telling me that women have been told since they were kids, maybe not directly, but in other ways with sports and other stuff like that, that the best that they can be is to be a male, to be a man, is to dominate, right? And that's not a really feminine way of thinking, right?
Anything boys can do, girls can do better.
Yeah, you know what I mean? The narrative is slowly shifting to being a woman should be a feminine, caring, loving, supporting thing, to women
Strong,
can dominate.
Independent.
Yes. Women can be strong, independent, just as men are. And I'm not saying that women should not be strong. They should not be independent in their own ways.
Yeah, that's actually a quality that I sought after when looking for a mate. Was I wanted someone strong and independent, but with a certain context.
Yes. So, but here's the thing. There's a misconception that women think that by pouring into their husbands, they become a slave and they're not able to cultivate their own identity.
I can see that.
Right. And obviously on the surface we can see that. But what we actually find is that through a pretty moral, constructive, healthy relationship, you actually see that the more that you pour into your husband, the more that he pours into you. Like I'll use
if he's a good husband.
If he's a good husband.
Yeah.
Now that's very important. A good note, because I mean you have to be careful who you're marrying. I'll use my marriage for an example. My wife, for the greater part of her life, has always been told what to do. Always. And a part of her has become reliant on that. Another part of her has become resentful for that. And so when we got married, one thing that I promised her and one thing that I do practice is that I allow her to figure situations out on her own. Right? She supports me. She's supportive. Anything that I want to do, I communicate with her and we communicate back and forth. But there's certain situations where I'm like, you can figure this out. And, sometimes that side of her that's kind of reliant on the more tell me what to do side is she thinks that I'm being insensitive and that I'm not caring for her. And I said, no. The thing is that you're pouring into me. You're supportive. And what I've realized from you is that you need to figure yourself out in certain ways. And so I allow you to work these things out so you can truly see your potential. And she appreciates that. But these are things that I think typically people are scared of losing themselves by pouring into other people's. And as a matter of fact, I had a guest on.
Like if you're serving the other person.
Yeah, well,
or living for them.
Exactly.
Not yourself.
Yeah, if you live for somebody else and you pour into them, you lose out on your own cup of tea. I actually had a guest on here. Remember Lily, the redhead?
Don't remember.
You don't remember? Okay, well, she actually talked exactly what I'm saying. She said that this is why she doesn't believe in marriage.
Yes. Okay.
So she doesn't believe in marriage because
I remember her stance on that.
Yeah, she doesn't think that. She doesn't want to put her life on hold by putting somebody else in the picture and either having to prioritize them or having to, some way, shape, or form, sacrifice some of her aspirations in any way.
Yeah.
To any way possible.
The family or
exactly.
Her husband.
She does not want to compromise.
Yeah.
And I mean, at the end of the day, that's her decision. And I'm not saying it's right or wrong, but what I am saying is that this is a fear. And this is a growing fear because of people like Jada Smith that want to, I call it toxic masculinity, where women want to conquer their husbands and they want to prove themselves to be.
Women are guilty of toxic masculinity the same as men could be. You could say.
That's true.
Yeah.
That's true. But what happens when, so I always ask this question is when I talk to women about this, it's like,
like a domineering attitude.
What do you want from your husband? You want him to be competent. You want him to be able to provide. You want him to be able to make decisions, and you want him to be the quote unquote man of the house.
Yeah,
you want him to be firm.
Spearhead, yeah.
Exactly. And whenever in a time of tragedy or whatnot, you want him to be able to figure things out. But what ends up happening, and I've seen marriages like this, is that there's some women that like to have that masculinity over their partner, and so the man constantly has to play the back seat. They always have to be in the passenger side. They can't make decisions for themselves because their wife's always trying to step over them and whatnot. They're trying to play that masculine role. But when a time of tragedy or in a time of need where the man needs to step up, he doesn't know how to do it anymore.
Yeah, he's out of practice.
Yeah, he's out of practice, exactly. And so now the wife's like, this is your time. This is when we need you. This is when our family needs you. And he's like, I'm trying, but it's, you know what I mean?
It's not coming to him naturally.
Exactly. And so these are things that women need to learn how to play their role. And I know people are going to get upset by that
one phrase. Yeah.
Yes, women need to learn how to play their role. Also, men need to learn how to play their role as well. Men and women have their own roles, their own responsibilities, and it is very important that they're aware of what they need to do. Because when you start to mix those things, that's where it starts to get tricky, and that's where the kids start to see, and they don't know who the role model for masculinity and being feminine is, and your child is growing up thinking that, well, my mom controlled the household the whole time, so my wife in the future should rule over me, right? My mom was a strong woman, so these are very important things, and I want to go out and say that I don't think that women are necessarily, and it might allude to, I guess, kind of like the clickbait title that women ruin men, but women aren't at full responsibility for this. Yeah, men need to be competent enough to realize their role, and they need to realize what type of man that they need to be, regardless.
And they haven't been.
This
generation can attest to that a lot.
Exactly. Men need to learn how to step up and be firm. Men and women need to learn how to learn their roles and then play their roles.
And do you think that women's behavior is a byproduct maybe of men's doing? Are they to blame for maybe women having to fill that gap?
Yes. Oh, yes. Yeah. 100%. This is what I'm saying. Men need to learn their role. How many single mothers are there out there? That men walk out on their partner? That is a great example. That is men's fault. Why women have been forced to step up and play that man role.
And it takes an incredible amount of character for a man to step into a relationship with a woman that is already mother to children.
Yes.
Several years in, and has figured life out.
Yeah.
And for him to play that dynamic, man, that it's admirable, but I'm assuming there's a lot of things to be worked out in that relationship.
Yeah. Oh yeah, for sure. There is there's a certain sense of humility that comes in that.
On both parts.
Yeah.
Because her having to now take a step back to let her husband be the leader when she's had to do it, her whole life, and she's learned to do things that may become instinct for her. A problem comes up and she wants to attack it right away instead of now I have my partner to. She may not give him the time to respond because she might want to attack it, and she has good intentions.
That's a great point. Right?
But at that point, that does take, like you said, humility on her part to now say, all right, the dynamic has changed now. Her role's going to be different.
Yes. Yeah, I would so to that I would say this isn't an easy thing. What I'm speaking of obviously takes humility, obviously takes time and effort. But just know that the next generation is held accountable, right? Yeah. And so for the man stepping up in that situation, you need to know your role, and you need to know that it is going to be hard for the female to let her guard down in a sense, and allow you to be the man of the relationship. This is something that I think that needs to be clear, though, before going into a relationship. This is something that needs to be done right. Why should it be done right? Because the next generation depends on it. Your children depend on it. Their lives depend on it. And I think that we're just starting to see a lot of confused people.
That's an understatement.
Yeah. We're starting to see identities and gender and all this stuff.
People don't know who they are anymore.
Yeah. I had a conversation with a really good friend of mine last night. We were talking about the whole LGBTQ, which we're not going to get into.
Yeah.
And we're talking about pansexuals, right? Because we're having a conversation. He's like, what's pansexual? And then I was like, well, it's somebody who is open to have sexual relation with anybody. And he's like, well, that's bisexual, right?
Not necessarily.
It's like, no, because
there's a reason the words are different.
Exactly.
They mean different things.
Exactly. So I said, no, because remember, the LGBTQ whatever plus, they don't believe in binary gender. They believe in
like a spectrum of gender.
They believe in multiple genders. So if they say I'm bisexual,
that means they only believe in two genders.
Yes, then for them that's not correct. So they say pansexual.
So within the transgender community, I'm getting off topic, but I'm assuming that they're at odds within themselves as a community because they don't agree on certain things.
Exactly. So that's actually we're going to be talking about this in a podcast coming up very soon. But think about it like this. They're only friends because they're enemies of their enemies.
They have a common enemy.
Exactly.
The straight people.
Yes. Yeah. The conservatives, the radical,
Yeah. People who are anti progressionalists.
Exactly. So they realize that they're a bigger threat. So we need to ally in certain areas, in order to conquer the giant.
Yeah.
And the giant is the anti.
And I don't know a lot about that area. It's not something I've looked into. Yeah, I'm learning. I want to learn too because, not that I care about being politically correct, but I do care about others' feelings in the sense that I don't want to offend anybody.
Yeah, I don't care about that. Yeah. I'll offend anybody. Here's the thing, too. It's because people think that it's like, well, you don't know how it feels to go through something like that. So you shouldn't speak that. I don't believe that to be true at all. Yeah. Here's the thing, people. It's like if people can know how to do the right thing, it's harder to do it. It's like, okay, I know not to do drugs, right? Let's just say, and that's up for contention as well. But it's like, I know not to do drugs, but I still do it, right? Because temptation took over me. Whatever. We'll use a better example. Okay. For me to recommend to teenagers that premarriage sex is bad.
Okay.
And people would say, well, you had premarriage sex, so why would you say that? That doesn't exclude me from knowing that it's the right or wrong thing to do.
Yeah.
Granted, I'm faulty.
Yes.
Right? Yes. But that doesn't mean that I know better than what I did. I know better than what I did. Because
you learn from experience.
Well, you learn from experience and you've seen the negative consequences. Right? So I don't necessarily buy into this narrative of like you can only speak about what you've gone through, perfected or gone through. It's like I don't have to be a drug addict to know that drugs can take you there. Bad. Yeah. Exactly.
I don't have to have done heroin to know that it's bad for you.
Exactly. Yeah. And so I can recommend that to somebody. But people don't buy into that. It's like, no, you don't know how it feels. You don't know how to, you know what I mean?
So you can't speak on it.
Exactly. Yeah. I don't buy that. I don't buy that BS.
That's a thing within the I guess the gun community or the defensive community. Also, there's a lot of like pro Second Amendment advocates that want to train and develop their skills for self-defense. But then you have certain people in military office or serving in some kind of military capacity that say, no, you're a civilian. You can't do that kind of stuff. Yeah. And some people take offense to that because they're like, well, I'm doing it to protect my family. I want to be competent in this skill for when I have the need for it. Yeah. And they kind of gatekeep that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Obviously, there's a lot of complex complex aspects to this.
Yeah.
For instance, it's like
you can apply it to almost a lot of things.
Yeah, it's like, well, just because I can't just say like, oh, I don't have my doctorates.
Oh yeah.
But I know that your liver is bad. Or something like that. That's just extreme, right? There's always
you're not a doctor, so you can't tell me not to drink.
Yeah. So it's
yeah. I get it.
It's a lot more complex than that.
But I see where that, you know.
So that's why I'm not worried about hurting anybody's feelings when I speak. Listen, you don't have to agree with me. I don't have to agree with you.
Yeah, but start your own podcast.
Exactly. Or hop on my podcast. We can have a discussion about it. I'm not trying to come on the podcast and piss anybody off. I'm just trying to simply speak my mind.
Yeah.
Because I can guarantee you when I speak my mind, other people are thinking like me. And so when you have something that can combat me or something that can oppose my stance, that's a good thing. And I welcome it. Why? Because that's how we figure things out. That's society. I am a representative of my society. Why? Because I grew up in this society. What makes up a society? A bunch of individuals, right?
Yeah.
They make up a society. I'm an individual.
Yeah.
And so I'm allowed to speak my mind, and that's what I do on this podcast. Just as you are allowed to speak. All the people that send me DMs and don't agree with me and they don't like about what I say, it's like, I get it. I understand.
Yeah.
And I respect it.
Let's talk about it.
Let's talk about it.
Yeah.
That's all I'm asking. That's a little bit off topic.
Yeah. But I get you. And you're always going to find someone who doesn't agree.
Yes.
All the time. Of course.
Which is fair.
Yeah. The fact is, like you said, though, what's going to ultimately bring the outcome forward is being able to sit down and talk about it. And there's a lot of people that don't want to talk about it. And they're at odds and unwilling to give, unyielding, and unable to see that, okay, this person might have a point, but there's never any compromise.
Yeah.
And I think that's where that behavior lends, it cycles back. It's the non compromising aspect of it, going back to the whole masculinity thing.
Yeah.
And men can be at very great fault for this too, because if they're overly domineering to the point where you're making your partner, your wife, feel as if she doesn't have a life because she's just lives to serve you.
Yes.
You're at fault for that. You're taking that away from her.
And this is why I recommend some type of religion or, you know what I mean? I believe, and we spoke about this before going on air.
Something to regulate.
A moral compass.
Yeah.
If, a great way to combat that, a tyranny male, a man, a husband that's destroying the household.
Headstrong.
You know why?
Egotistical.
Because he's, what's the word for it?
Frail?
No. There's I've been using it in the past podcast, but whatever. It's basically where the person believes that they are God. Like they dictate what's right and what's wrong.
Yeah, they have a very narcissistic attitude. Because
they don't have a moral compass. They don't worship God. They don't worship anybody above them. Right? And so this is why I recommend, well, I'm a Christian.
Yes,
so I would recommend Christianity to people, because you want a husband that's in charge of the household to know, look,
he has a head too.
And he needs to follow these rules. And when he follows these rules, he gets a loving wife.
Yeah.
Right? And he gets great children. That's why that's important. But at the end of the day, with this conversation, I think that both men and women need to know their roles. They need to know their roles, and they need to learn how to play it.
Yeah. For sure we can say, all right, this is a prime example of what you should not be doing. Yes. These are, the common word is red flags, right? These are the red flags. But it's easy for the men to point them out in the women, and it's easy for the women to point them out in the men.
Yeah.
What are you going to compromise on?
Exactly.
And can you put your egos aside at the end of it to say, okay, you know what? You're right. I think I do have a very short temper. I think that I have been a little bit one-sided in favor of my own opinion. I think I have not been doing my part to help you take on the responsibilities of a household.
Yes.
Because I'm justifying all my work outside of the household. I think I'm also, any number of, and I'm listing things that my wife has told me that she's seen. Am I too frail to admit that I can work on things? Because we're all imperfect.
Yeah.
And to not think that you have something to work on,
yes,
that's a red flag in itself. Not everyone's gonna have everything 100%.
Yeah, we talked about this also before the air too, about how certain conversations need to happen in marriage.
Yeah.
And I feel like this whole thing of, and like you said, you need to put your ego aside, because some of the times we just don't want to admit to our faults. And so what we do is we put aside all the things that are going on in our marriage. They can be small stuff at the moment, but we put them off because it's like, I don't want to go through that argument right now. I would much rather my wife be happy at the moment, me be happy at the moment. Let's enjoy our dinner.
Let's procrastinate.
Let's procrastinate it. And what happens, that turns into a molehill, and then it becomes a huge argument. Probably
because it goes unchecked for so long,
and it probably makes both partners very resentful, and it could. And this is maybe an exaggeration, maybe not so much, but it could lead to divorce. Yeah,
if gone, unchecked for so long.
Yeah, I talked to you about this, about how my wife asked me the other night at dinner. She was like, we don't really argue that much. Yeah. That's a good thing. And I said,
Is it?
Is it though? Yeah. Because maybe we're avoiding something. Maybe you're avoiding telling me something that I annoy you. And maybe I'm avoiding that conversation of something that you do that annoys me.
Yeah.
And she's like, what do you mean? I was like, I can tell you right now, there's certain things that I typically just don't like that you do.
Yeah.
And I can guarantee you, and I told her, I know a couple that of things that I do that you just don't like, but you avoid it because you don't want to have this discussion at the moment. And so we agreed on at dinner that we were going to discuss these things, and that we will continue to discuss these things because that's a part of marriage. We want to have those little bickers and those little small little arguments before they turn into huge arguments and fights.
Yeah. A discussion before it becomes blown out of proportion.
Exactly. Yeah. And but that takes a lot of humility.
It does.
And
and in my 30 years of life, I just kind of feel like you get out of it what you put in it. And I think it's fair. Life is always fair. Some people say life is not fair, but you have to use your words wisely. What is fair? To me, fair is neutral. You have unfair, that's negative. And then you have favorable, which is positive, right? You can flip a coin 3 or 4 times and say, oh, I got heads 60% of the time. But that's not really a good enough outcome. You got to flip that coin 100, 200 times, and it's always going to be that 50-50 variable when measured appropriately. So I think life is always fair. You reap what you sow. And being a man of faith, as you are, that's something taught from, infancy.
That's an interesting.
You're gonna have those laws of laws of physics that apply in something tangible that also apply to your consequences.
That's interesting, because I've always lived with life's unfair, and you just have to suck it up and keep moving forward. But I see where you're going.
Why is it unfair? What did you do to cause that?
Yeah, actually, if we think about it deep enough and far back enough, we can actually probably find something that we could have changed in order to
that ripple effect.
Yes,
right.
The butterfly effect. Yes, that's correct. There are some tragedies that we can't control.
Yeah, there's accidents, legit accidents,
sicknesses,
imperfections,
cancer, stuff like that people would label as unfair. But to your point, I'm thinking about it now. It's like, okay, would it be fair if somebody else got it?
It's chance. And chance is fair.
I see where you're coming from.
I got that from Batman.
I don't watch movies. So.
No, I got that from Will Smith talk. No ironically.
Really?
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah. Because I don't, and the quote didn't come from him, but he used it. But I like the analogy and it was someone else I was watching. They held up a blank piece of paper.
Yeah.
And they said, "This is everything that you are entitled to in life. A blank sheet of paper. Nothing. Life doesn't owe you anything.
Nothing at all.
Nothing at all. You make of it what you want."
Yep.
But that same blank is a blank canvas. You put your creativity to use, and you make of it what you wish.
Yeah, exactly.
Negative or positive.
I agree with that.
Up to you.
So I just looked on Instagram, and unfortunately, there are no responses. I think that there are some people that do want to respond. Maybe it's just a little bit too much of a touchy topic.
Yeah, could be. Yeah.
Could be, but I think we're gonna wrap it up there.
Yeah.
What do you think?
Yeah, I think so
that was
too,
a
man.
good, quick conversation.
Yeah.
I think we got straight to the point. Why women like this are ruining men? To conclude the whole conversation,
just to be fair, I didn't know what the title of this discussion was going to be until I got here. So, yeah, you kind of got me on that one. But you got to have a spicy title
for sure. And to be fair, like I said, I don't blame women fully for things like this.
Yeah,
you made a great point that women in certain areas have had to step up and be masculine and take on that, I guess, manly role. Mm-hmm. So that's a good point. But at the end of the day, I think that men and women do need to learn their roles and they need to play it right. And I'll leave off with that.
I think this deserves a part 2.
Think so?
Oh, yeah. And I'd love to hear a woman's side of it, man.
I would love that too.
So if any of you guys are up to have the discussion, man, I'd love to be here for it.
Yeah, definitely. Listen, guys, I appreciate y'all so much. If you're listening to this on Spotify, I want to ask you for a favor. And if you listened this far, if you can please leave a 5-star rating on the podcast. Obviously, you cannot leave a like on it, but by leaving a 5-star, it'll boost up the algorithm. Also, if you're watching on YouTube, if you can do me a favor, leave a like and subscribe so you don't miss any other conversations. You can leave in the comment sections what you would like for us to talk about or any input that you would like. But the best way to get in contact with me and the whole podcast crew is if you find us on Instagram, and that is The Real Common Podcast. You can find the podcast on pretty much every platform that you have for podcasts. That is going to be The Common Podcast. I appreciate y'all so much, and we'll catch y'all next time. Thank you, guys. On the track.